press coming out today to hear our important announcement. We're here to talk about not only the fact that Common Core is still alive and well in South Carolina schools, but also about the frustration of parents. There were thousands of parents who are affiliated with our organization. That's South Carolina Parents Involved in Education, and I'm Sherry Pugh, the president. But we led the fight along with thousands of parents across the state to end the Common Core standards. And at the end, we were happy to have a bill that required the State Department of Education to rewrite the standards. But parents were very disappointed and frustrated when they learned that the standards that were rewritten were simply Common Core rebranded. So out of frustration, the parents who have worked with Parents Involved in Education collaborated in a campaign to opt out of testing. Parents chose to make this act of civil disobedience because they feel that their voices are no longer important in their children's education. The State Department of Education did a training with state superintendents, and a representative of the State Department of Education went so far as to tell school district superintendents that parents could serve jail time if they kept their kids home from school. Now after that, parents chose to send their kids to school after the threat of jail time, and they gave advance notice to all the schools that they didn't want their children to be tested. There wasn't a consistent policy around the state, and in other areas of the state, parents' refusal was honored and children were given alternative activities and were not penalized in any way for not testing. But that wasn't the case here in Greenville County. Greenville County School District chose to take a hard line against the students and parents in this county.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening and taking the time for such an important issue. During the spring, we were notified that our son Avery, who was a then 7th grader at Riverside Middle here in Greenville County, would be taking MAP testing. He would be taking SCPIE, and he would also be taking the SCPIE test. We chose to refuse those tests. They're based on standards which South Carolina had said and chosen to do away with. We politely refused. We notified ahead of time via the principal. We also notified Superintendent Royster of our decision to opt Avery out of testing. We were told that Avery would be sent to his classroom and he would be offered the test despite the fact that we as parents had chosen to not allow him to participate in those. The day Avery went to school, he was very nervous. He, being 13 years old, you can imagine having to stand up to your teacher, to your principal, and obey your mother. I'm sure, that was, for him, a terrifying experience and a difficult decision to make. Avery was, he was led to his classroom. He sat down. His teacher came over, knowing that he was refusing, offered Avery the test. Avery politely declined, said, "No, my mother has written a note and I'm not to participate in the testing." The teacher waited approximately 10 minutes after reading all the testing instructions. At that point, the other students began the test. Avery was asked yet again, "Avery, will you begin the test?" At that point, he politely refused again. The principal then came into the classroom, asked Avery, "Are you going to take the test?" Avery again politely refused. Avery was escorted out of his classroom in front of all of his peers to the library, where he was again read the testing instructions and asked 2 more times, "Will you take this test?" Avery was required to sit in the school library in complete silence, no book, no paper, with only his test booklet and a pencil in front of him for 3 school days. That was during the ACT Aspire testing. During the SCPIE testing, the same thing occurred. At the end of this, we were notified that Avery was issued a disciplinary referral and was written up for refusal to obey school officials. This is a charge that will stay on his school record and could affect him getting college scholarships. It could affect him in gaining access to jobs. It could even affect him if he chose to enter the military. Avery explained to me about the second day of testing. He said, "Mom, I just feel like a criminal. My principal comes into my classroom and gets me in front of my friends, in front of everyone I know, and says, 'Are you going to take this test?' and acts as if I'm doing something wrong when I'm doing what you've taught me to do." Having my 13-year-old son afraid to attend school because he is being asked to obey his parents against the wishes of administrators and teachers, we hope that the passing of this bill will allow us to be confident in sending our children to public school, being a part, an active part of their education.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for being here as well to hear about this. I was very disturbed earlier this year to learn about cases like this occurring in our state. I've always been of the opinion that the public school system is a valued and necessary part of our society, that it exists to serve the parents, the students, the citizens of our state, not the other way around. Parents and students don't exist to serve the school system or any agenda that may or may not be behind that school system. When we start having situations like this where there's coercion happening, when there's a difference of opinion, the only option you're leaving parents with is to leave the system altogether. Parents have the right to refuse, and this is a piece of legislation not establishing that right, simply protecting it. House Bill 4330, and this bill simply says that the General Assembly finds that parents in South Carolina have the fundamental right to control the education of their children. There's teachers and there's school officials all over this country that recognize the fact that there's a lot of problems with our standardized testing the way we do it in this country right now. We do too much, we test for the wrong things, we take the results in the wrong way. There's a lot of good, legitimate reasons for parents to refuse testing, but at the end of the day, it's their right to do so, and we've got to protect that right. And that's what I'm seeking to do here.
Representative Mike Burns, Northern Greenville County, District 17. I'm here today to stand in for some of those parents who were intimidated and felt fearful that they shouldn't come out and be as brave as this young mom is here today to do the right thing for what they think their families believe in. I remember back a generation ago, we kept hearing the phrase, the school in loco parentis, in place of the parent. And back at that time, that phrase meant that the school was bound and determined to serve the parents' wishes and try to make things as uniform as possible with the close-knit community in which they serve the students. And that has evolved to sort of a bad place where we find ourselves right now. Back in May of 2014, we thought we had this taken care of. As a matter of fact, we had about an 86-20 vote in the House, with only 2 Republicans not voting for the determination of these assessment standards with Common Core. But what we need to do with this bill now, in this interim time till we get our situation straightened out, we need to protect our parents and protect those students of those parents where they have some say-so in how their children are being handled and they're not penalized. And as she so eloquently said a minute ago, right up unto applications for colleges, for jobs, for military service, any of those things, these notations in their school record can be very harmful. And I would also ask Representative Hill if he'd help us remember we need to amend this bill one more time before we get it through to also include some expungement of some of these cases that have already gone.
Thank you, Representative Burns. I just would like to thank parents for being here today and taking a stand like this, and thank y'all for being here too. But Sheriff, you and Jonathan Hill on this bill, following this bill, it's just it's so encouraging to see people take a stand up for what's right, do the right thing, and you're going to pay a cost for it always. That's just the way it is. But it's time that we stood up in everything, education in particular, for the right thing and stand up for the right reasons. So I want to echo everything that's been said here basically, and I'm honored and privileged to be part of this, to co-sponsor this bill, and once again, thank you, Representative Hill, for what you've done. Thank you.